Hello everyone, it's the Gruppeteer, and I'm back again with another episode of Cartoons vs. Cancer, and today's episode is a very special one. In the studio today we have Mr. Chris Williams, who is the co-director of Big Hero 6 and Bolt, and the co-writer, or on the team of writers, for the new Disney movie, or the recent Disney movie, Moana. We're very happy to have him on the show today. Hey Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you so much for having me on. I'm very excited to talk to you and whoever's out there.
Hey, I'm just going to move right there. No problem. Of course, Cartoons vs. Cancer is all to help my good friend Madeline Carlson's post-cancer treatment and the good people at the Dana-Farber Boston Children's Hospital. So if you want to donate, which you should, please donate in the link below. There is a link right in the description. And of course, since Chris is not in the audience today, or he's not in the studio today, we have this pillow that looks like Baymax to represent him. So anytime you ask him a question, his spirit, mind, and body have been trapped in this little old pillow, which I hope stays up right here in the studio. Cool, it does.
Yes, it is. I'm in there. I'm really in there.
This is him. This is really him. This is what he looks like. I was really surprised when I found that out myself. So, Chris, I mean, we're just gonna start off on the high note. A lot of people, everyone loves Big Hero 6, but a lot of people when they saw it were shocked by one specific scene, and that's the Takeshi scene. All right, first of all, if you haven't seen Big Hero 6, spoiler alert, and also you probably shouldn't be watching this interview at all. Second of all, in the scene, I guess to refresh your memory, Takeshi, which is Hero's brother, gets stuck inside of a convention hall and something of that sort, and it blows up, and Takeshi is no more. And I remember, because that came out, I was about like 10 or 11, that blew my mind that Disney would do that in a movie. And do you get a lot of people asking you, like, why you ruined their childhood with the Takeshi scene?
Well, there was obviously a shock to the system, but for us, it was so fundamental to what the story was about. There was no way we could tell the story. We knew the story from the beginning was a story at its core about loss, and so it was. We had to figure out how to depict it in a way that felt hopefully truthful and emotional, without being, I guess, too gratuitous. But it's funny because the scene we got sort of the strongest reaction to, and I think at this point we have to say that there's going to be spoiler alerts. Yeah,
spoiler alerts if you haven't seen it.
The movie came out a couple years ago, so
yeah.
We have to be able to talk about it.
Yeah.
The scene towards the end where it appears that Baymax, who becomes the surrogate to Hero's brother Tadashi, seems to perish as well. That was the scene that really seemed to wreck people, and there was, and I was in theaters where I could just hear people really getting upset all around me. And on one hand, that's what we were trying to do. You know, we wanted to elicit an emotion, and we want people to really invest in the characters, and so on one hand, I felt like we were successful in our attempt to do that. But at the same time, I felt kind of bad about everyone breaking down all around me. Yeah. And there was a part of me that wanted to just stand up and say, "Hey, everybody, don't worry. Just wait like a minute and a half. Baymax is coming back." But it was really that scene that seemed to really affect people.
And I understand if this is a personal question, but is the theme of loss something that's personal to you?
Yeah, actually, that's something that I've talked about. It was I do think if you're able to draw from your own life experience, then it really can infuse the movie with meaning and truth. And I lost my dad not too long before I was brought on to work on the movie with Don Hall, who was the other director. And I guess for me, I had gone through a period of mourning before I kind of I achieved, I think, a real catharsis when I started to see more and more of my dad in me, and I started playing games with my kids that he used to play with me, and I really started to, I guess, come to terms with the idea, or accept the idea that people can live on through you, and people that you lose can affect the choices that you make, and hopefully you can keep them with you, and they can help make you a better person. And I sort of I reached that place of catharsis, and I knew that was I felt that could be the journey for the main character in Big Hero 6.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had that central idea, that central thematic message that I really believed in.
Mm-hmm.
And then once we had that, we were able to tell this hopefully entertaining, fun superhero origin story. That's the movie we were making, but its core, for us emotionally, the emotional through line was about loss.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, yes, I was pulling from my own life experience.
That's very interesting. And you were actually the first person, I hope I'm not wrong about this because that'd be really embarrassing. You are the first person we've had on the show who has actually won an Oscar for the movie that they've directed, not a short, a movie. So you get up there and it's speech time. And I gotta know, did you have a speech written? Did you have a speech prepared?
No, and we did discuss the fact that if we were fortunate enough to win,
mm-hmm.
We didn't want to be choreographing anything, so we just said that Don Hall, who'd been on the movie before I was, should be the one to speak. And so when we got up there, Don got to say what he was thinking about, and he talked about his parents, and it was a really nice speech that he gave, I felt. And so yeah, and it was one of the weird things that happened there was the person that actually, the celebrity, first, it's just weird to be on that stage. Mm-hmm. You know, I've watched that stage year after year.
Yeah.
My mom was a big fan of the Oscars, so I grew up watching it every year. And now I find myself on that stage, strangely, you know, and all those people are looking at us. Yeah. And so the whole thing is a pretty overwhelming experience. But one of the neat things that came out of it is the person that handed us, the celebrity that was up there, that handed us our physical Oscars, was The Rock. And
The Rock?
It was The Rock, yeah.
The Rock himself.
So then what happens is, after you receive your Oscar, you then are sort of funneled backstage and you navigate all the press that's back there.
Yeah.
You go through this labyrinth. And you're accompanied by your celebrity, who was The Rock in this case, for a good stretch of that. And he, coincidentally, had just been cast to play the demigod Maui in the movie Moana. And which wasn't going to be coming out for a number of years. Mm-hmm. But he told us as we were walking together, he told us that he'd just been cast. And he started asking us if we had any tips for acting in animation. And so we gave him our thoughts, and we didn't realize that about a year after that, Don and I would be brought on to Moana, and we would then be flying to Miami to work with The Rock or Dwayne directly. So we all ended up going full circle, and we got to work with him in person.
And I gotta know, because in a lot of recent interviews and stuff, he hasn't been he hasn't liked been called The Rock as much. When you meet him, do you say, hi, Mr. Johnson, or do you say hey, Mr. Rock?
I had to get that out of the way straight away. That was one of the first conversations I had with him. I was like, okay, so we're gonna work together. What do I call you? Are you The Rock? Are you Dwayne? Yeah. What's going on here? Are you Dwayne The Rock Johnson? Because he's been all those things. And he said he didn't mind, actually. He said you can call him whatever you want to call him. He turned out to be a really sweet and humble guy. And he was really fun to work with. He was game to try anything we threw at him. Any suggestion we gave him, he ran with. He was, of course, as you'd imagine, just really energetic. And he was someone who really took it seriously. I think if you're someone who gets to his level of superstardom, I think you can almost just sort of get by with that. Yeah. But he was really, I think he's really developed his craft. I think he really was developing the tools for really inhabiting the character, and he really made that character work. I think he did a fantastic job.
And I don't want to get this show any more political or anything like that, but he's been talking a lot about running for president in 2020. Now, I don't want to ask about any of your political views or sides, but would you vote for Dwayne The Rock Johnson for president?
Well, I suppose I'd have to hear his platform.
Yeah.
I don't really know much about about his politics, but I gotta say it would be fun to go into a voting booth and check the box that says The Rock on it.
Yeah.
So I'm inclined to think I would vote for him.
Yeah.
But I guess I would have to hear what he was what his point of view was first.
I know he'd beat Scissors. I know that much. Ta-da, ding! Oh, that was a zinger. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Ben. Okay.
Oh, it's so good I get to repeat it. I said he definitely beat Scissors.
I'm sorry. The line is a little fuzzy, and I won't ask you to repeat it again, but I'm sure it was awesome.
It's the third time. I said he definitely beat Scissors.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, I heard it that time, and it was worth the wait.
Oh, that good. That was like the trilogy. Oh, so.
I'm sorry to make you repeat it.
No, don't worry about it. It was that good. I just had to repeat it 3 times. So, you were at the Oscars this year, as we were just talking about before we got on camera, for Moana, which we'll get into a little bit later. But obviously, since you were there this year at the 2016 technically Oscars, then you were there for the La La Land and Moonlight mix-up. And can you tell me what the theater was like when that all happened? Because we saw the first row and what happened, but where you were, I mean, what was going on?
It was wall to wall, stunned, shocked, silent people.
Yeah.
No, there was gasps and things, but you just couldn't process it. You know, it's always been a show that's been so well run.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's always been it's the crown jewel of the award shows, and it's always run, you know, pretty flawlessly. And now this happened, and I think, and this was like the pinnacle moment. This was what the whole night was leading towards, and so you just couldn't make sense of it.
Yeah.
And so I was as dumbfounded as anybody, and ultimately, what I took away from it is I felt really bad for Warren Beatty, because it wasn't his fault at all.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was the presenters did nothing wrong. You know, and I really felt bad for them. They were stuck up there with this mix-up. And they were just unsure what to do, as anybody would be. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, that was the thing that was started to come to light the next day or the next couple of days is they were not to blame even a little bit. Yeah. So it was I think it was that accounting firm or a representative from that accounting firm had messed up royally.
And this isn't a show about the Oscars, I swear. This is just the last question. Who were you wearing on the Oscars, Chris?
I think it was a Hugo Boss.
A Hugo.
There was a funny moment when Don and I were preparing in the lead up to the Oscars where we were nominated for Big Hero 6. Don and I had basically been. When you work on these movies that last year and a half, you're pretty much at the studio day and night, right?
Yeah.
You're there for breakfast, you're there for lunch, you're there for dinner. You work long hours. We would go home, 10 or 11 at night, and so Don and I saw a lot of each other over that. Don Hall, who's the other director, I think I said that. Yeah. We saw a lot of each other. Too much of each other for that year and a half, and there's no time to do anything. You are working 24/7, and we were struggling to find an opportunity to just go out and buy a suit, and so there was a moment where there was an opening in my calendar, and I raced down to the Nordstrom's in Glendale. And I went to the suit section, and I picked out a suit, and I went to the dressing room, and I was going to try it on, and then I heard Don Hall's voice. He had taken the same opportunity to go to the same store, and so that 1 hour where we might have been apart, we were joined again by our shared need for a new suit.
Foiled again by the Hall. Every time with him. Well, you heard it here, folks. Chris Williams sponsors the Aeropostale down in Glendale. Go ahead and tell him Chris sent you. tell him you heard it here.
I swear.
So, of course, you were at the Oscars this year for Moana, which is what we're going to get into next. And we couldn't talk about Moana on a show that is aimed for college students without talking about the man, the myth, the legend himself, Lin Manuel Miranda. You worked extensively with Lin on the project, not exactly in the same fields, but obviously he was very involved in the movie making process. And someone in the comments would like to know, how was it like working with Lin on a medium that he hadn't tackled before?
Well, yeah, I've been very lucky. I've worked with so many really cool and really nice people, and he is up there, man. He obviously, he just oozes talent. It's so obvious. You don't have to make a case for that. But he is just the approachable, most genuine guy. It was so easy to work with, and he was just so responsive. He came with really great ideas, really great thoughts about the characters, about the movie, and certainly about the songs and the content of the songs, but he was also someone who could engage with you, and you sort of give him your point of view, and he'd come back and come with something with a take on that, and it was just a great back and forth. And we used to see him. We'd see him once or twice a week over the Skype or over the CLI, the video phone call. And I always look forward to those meetings. He really is a really nice guy, and he actually, he did that rap before before he sang the song at the Oscars this year. I'm going back to the Oscars, and we were at a party the night before, and he gave me a one-on-one sneak preview of the performance he was going to do on stage the next night, and so I found myself in the enviable position of being the only person for a Lin Manuel Miranda show. Wow! And I felt very honored by that.
Yeah.
He's a really, really cool guy.
And with a movie like Moana that is not a musical, but it has a lot of songs in it that drive the story forward, does the story department work a lot with the music department because of how well the two coincide?
Yeah, there's a constant back and forth because the two, you can't be on two distinct tracks, right? If it's a musical, the story has to inform the music, and then the music informs the story. So it's a constant back and forth, and Lin was so critical for that, and I mean, he brought so much of his personal point of view to things. When we started talking to him about the Tamatoa song, the giant crab that sings the song. Where he taunts Maui, that happened to be not long after, I think about a week after we lost David Bowie. And Lin Manuel was a huge fan of Bowie's and really inspired by him, and he'd been listening to Bowie constantly since hearing the news. And so he thought, I think I know what to do. I think I want to take a sort of a Bowie inspired or Bowie infused song and use it here, and so that came purely out of his experience. And he just brought so much of his own personal perspective to the movie, and it really is. You can't stray too far from each other as far as the people who are writing the script or storyboarding and the songwriters.
And on the subject of music, you have worked, of course, when you made Bolt, which you and Byron Howard, a good friend of ours. Hey, Byron, you're probably not watching this. On the show, you worked on Bolt, which was a fun fact, the first movie I ever saw in 3D back in like 2008. 2008, I think so.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. But I digress. In that movie, of course, Hannah Montana herself, Miley Cyrus, played one of the main characters, Penny. And I would love to know, I don't know if you're a musically inclined man yourself, but have you heard the new Miley Cyrus song? It just came out the other day.
That's a good question. I'll have to give it a listen, but I have not heard it yet. When I worked with her, she was pretty young. She was I don't know exactly how old she was, but she was young and had not, I was not prepared for the version of Miley Cyrus that we all met, a couple years later. And so yeah, it was a different person. And so I really enjoyed working with her. She was another person who really surprised me by how committed she was to the character, and I think she brought a lot to that character as well. And so I'm a fan. I like her.
And
I'll have to give her a listen.
Yeah, it's called Malibu. That's all I know of it. But also on that movie, you worked with Gruppetstudios' favorite and frequent running joke on the show, Mr. John Travolta himself, who might be my favorite person who's ever lived. No offense, Chris. I have to know, what is it like working with the man, the myth, the Travolta?
I really enjoyed that. Actually, I should follow up. You asked me if I'm musically inclined. I am the worst singer on this planet. I have the most limited range you can imagine, and that actually came into play. There was a short film called Frozen Fever that came out with the Frozen characters, and there was a song written, and in it, Bobby and Kristen, who were the songwriters for Frozen, wrote a very complicated line for Oaken to sing. Oh, and I'm the voice of Oaken. We talked about that earlier. From Frozen. And so I was forced to sing this song, and I butchered it, and I would try over and over and over again, and I was trying to use my Beyonce hands and try to get into it, and I just could not hit these notes.
Does that help?
As it turns out, Chris Buck, who was one of the directors on Frozen, actually sounds a lot like me, and he's actually a great singer.
Yeah.
So if you listen to Frozen Fever, when you hear my line that I sing, I sing the majority of it, but the last part of it, when he starts to sing a higher note, they feather in Chris Buck. So you're actually when you're hearing it, you're transitioning from hearing me to hearing Chris Buck. So that's a little insider info.
The Gruppetstudios exclusive.
Yes. I don't think I've ever explained that to anybody before. But as far as John Travolta, he was awesome. I love that guy. Yeah. I mean, that dude has been famous since he was a teenager. He was Vinnie Barbarino, which way predates you. But he's so famous. Every generation sort of claims him as their own, and so he's one of these guys that he gets recognized everywhere, and I think he's managed all that really well. And I loved working with that dude. He was a real night owl.
Oh, really?
So we would book recording studios at midnight in Florida, and work through the night, and that's just the way he liked to work when he could. Yeah. And he was awesome. Like, we would sort of talk about a line, and then he would do a version of the line, then he'd do another and another and another, and he could do 20 or 30 takes of the same line just in one run. And so he was a real gift. He was awesome, and he was really the perfect casting for that character of Bolt. And he's played a lot of these kind of characters who are really heavies, like the real tough guys, like Get Shorty. And I think the reason why he pulls those characters off is because no matter how menacing his characters are, there's this innate kind of sweetness that he has that always comes through. And so, of course, Bolt thought he was this killer superhero dog, and he carried himself that way, but at his core, he was a sweet and loving and loyal dog, and so there was always that part of him that would shine through, and so he was the perfect guy for that part. I did end up at the very end of the experience of working on Bolt, led to one of the stranger moments for me in my career, I guess. We had recorded most of the movie. We had just a few more lines, like a handful of lines that we still needed to get with John. And he was shooting a movie down at the Sony lot across town. And so we actually rented a mobile recording studio on the back of a truck. Yeah. And we drove down there, and we parked it in the Sony lot. And we waited till John was on a break from the movie he was shooting, and he came into our truck. And at that point, he'd seen the trailer. He was really excited about the movie. We'd had a great experience, and it was hugs all around. And then he went into the truck, this really sort of tiny, narrow space, to record. And he was and he was trying to find the character, and he couldn't find it. He wasn't able to sort of be Bolt.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what? I've been looking at you for all these years, and all these recording sessions. I've been looking at you when I was doing Bolt, and so that sort of triggers this character for me. And so, is there a way that I could look at you while I'm recording? But the room was such that everything was really confined, so I had to climb sort of under and over equipment and wedge myself into the corner of this truck, and I found myself was jammed in there with a microphone right in front of my face, and then 6 inches beyond that is John Travolta's face, right? So he's a foot from me, and he's looking right at me, and he's doing this part. And I kind of did one of those things where I kind of went outside of myself.
Yeah.
And I was sort of looking at this strange scenario where here's John Travolta, you know, and this is Get Shorty, this is Pulp Fiction, this is Saturday Night Fever, this is Vinnie Barbarino. And I'm here with him, and I thought, how did I get here? You know, like, what were the series of random occurrences and choices that I made in my life that led me to be here, wedged in this corner with John Travolta? And I started thinking about, like, how did I become a director in animation? Because I'm really not sure, and it was never my specific goal.
Yeah.
I knew that I was someone who I always like a challenge, and I love working in animation, and I'll take on any new challenge that presents itself. But how did I get here? And at that point, Travolta said, "Well, how was that?" And I realized that I completely tuned him out. I didn't hear a thing that he said, and I said, "That was great. That's a wrap." And that was pretty much our last recording session. All in all, he was a really cool guy. I always look forward to working with him, and it was always a very kind of relaxed and cool atmosphere with him. He didn't carry any of that superstar thing with him, so he was really cool.
Wow. I can't say that there's a lot of people I know who've had an existential crisis while John Travolta has had a conversation right across from them. That is an amazing story. That is great.
Oh, it was wild.
So, Frozen, obviously, the movie that came out right before Big Hero 6. Our friends Jennifer Lee, Chris Buck. I actually don't know either of them, but I really want Jennifer to come on the show. I digress. Wanted you, or at least they got you to be, as you were saying, the voice of Oaken, which is, for those who don't know, the one who owns the sauna, or the sauna, and also the outpost, I guess you'd call it, where in the movie, you know, Anna, she gets frozen, she has to go in, blah blah blah. You know the scene. He's the guy who did cuckoo.
Yeah,
Chris,
I know well.
Chris, I don't like to ask fuss for my guests. I really don't, but can you do the voice, please? Please, Chris. Please, Chris.
Sure, let's see. Yes, I can. I have to think of the lines he says. Well, of course he says, that's a big one. And he says, fix my blowout. And he says, how did you cool me? So how's that? Is that good enough?
That was outstanding. Thank you. That was great. And the thing is, the thing with little characters like that is, you know, that isn't Christian Bale, and that isn't the real big names on the project. Do you have people come up to you and say, like, "Oh, do the voice, Chris"?
Well, the funny thing is, I'm not known as a voice actor, and I don't resemble Oaken at all. And so when people find out that I'm him, they're really shocked. I went to record a couple lines for a trailer at one point, and I showed up at the recording studio, and they were like, "Did you bring the guy?" And I was like, "No, I am the guy." And they were very surprised. That character, I was actually a storyboard artist on Frozen for about a year, and that character was inspired by my Norwegian in-laws, actually.
Really?
He's a distillation of some of my Norwegian family.
Yeah.
By my wife, and my mother-in-law is very quick to point out that my Norwegian accent is very suspect. It's not a very good Norwegian accent.
Everyone's a critic.
But I mean, the truth is, I think that's part of what works about it is he doesn't seem quite right, you know. I feel my justification is that he is working at this outpost, and he's probably had lots of travelers from all over the world pass through, and he's picked up bits of accents from here and there. That's my rationale, anyway.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I'll buy that. That's good. That's good enough for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. In the comments. Good. Getting back to Big Hero 6, which was. I was just about to segue, but in the comments, a name that isn't written down would like to know, are there any plans, or were there any plans during the making of Big Hero 6 to make an actual Baymax robot? And I can assume that that doesn't mean one that does the same services as Baymax, because that would be next level technology. But,
well, the original Baymax, was somewhat inspired by actual technology. Don Hall, who's the other director, he had gone on a research trip, and he'd gone to a lot of universities, and he really learned a lot about robotics. And this idea of soft robotics was an actual thing that people were talking about, and are still talking about. This idea of an inflatable robot was a real thing. And Don saw a really rudimentary example of something like that on his tour, and then there was and then some of the Baymax design was inspired by a trip that he took to Japan, and he kind of melded those things into the character of Baymax, and so there was no talk about making an actual Baymax, but I know that right now they're working on a ride for Tokyo Disneyland that's going to have some full-size Baymaxes that are sort of piloting the car that you're in, and so we got to see a prototype of that, and it's basically a model of a life-size Baymax, and it's really well designed and really well built, and it's the closest I've come, besides being at the theme parks, because I've come to feeling like I was in the presence of the real Baymax, so that was pretty cool.
And I have to know, for someone who makes, you know, animated films, a lot of people I have on the show can say claims to fame by saying, I've made this movie or that movie, and I love everybody we've had on here. But a lot of studios don't reach people the same way that Disney reaches people, and that's actually something we've talked about on the show, about the sort of effect that those movies have on people. And with the way that you've seen Big Hero 6 just take over the place, I mean, people are wearing Baymax hats, people got their Big Hero 6 shirts all over the place. Is that something that you're really proud to see?
Well, yeah, it actually really is. It's because it means that the people have really invested in the characters, and they want the characters to live beyond the movie, you know. And when we work on these movies, we spend years developing the story and developing the characters, and we feel like we know them very well, and we feel like we know how they would react in almost any situation, and they become very real to us. And so when the movie comes out, you almost feel like a proud parent watching your kid go off to college. Like now they're going to engage. They were all yours, but now they're going to engage with the world. Yeah. And so when you see them being received like that, when you see people responding like that, it's really fun, but it's also kind of emotional. You know, like people have embraced them. Yeah. And they mean something to people. And we've certainly with Big Hero, probably as much as anything that I've worked on, people talked about it being something that helped them through a tough time. And sometimes it's a tough time because of something they lost or something they've gone through in their lives. Maybe they spent time in a hospital, and so we were really gratified to hear some of those stories, and we continue to get letters and feedback saying that the movie was helpful to them, and of course, you know, the primary goal is we want to entertain people, you know, take people away and give them a great hour and a half, you know. But if it sticks with people, and if it's something that is again, if it's cathartic for them, then you feel like you're telling a story that has sort of it's a universal story, you know,
Yeah.
and because we spend all this time working on these movies, and ultimately it's not it doesn't mean anything until an audience hears it or sees it, you know.
Yeah.
That's the whole point. We make these stories for an audience, and so until that happens, it's nothing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
A movie that doesn't get seen isn't anything, and so we really sort of cherish that relationship with the audience, and I think that's something. I mean, we're very lucky at Disney to have the kind of reach that we do, and I really respect a lot of the independent filmmakers and some of the smaller studios that make these amazing movies. And I try to check out as many as I can.
Mm-hmm.
But we certainly are very lucky to have the reach that we do, and I appreciate that, and I'm glad that we're able to have our stories be seen.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope this isn't anything that the public isn't supposed to know, but I'm pretty sure it is. And now it's getting turned into a TV show. There's pretty sure Disney XD is making, or actually you're working on it right now, right? The TV show, the Big Hero 6 TV show. How did that come about?
Well, we were approached and by the Disney TV studio and asked if it was cool, and we met with them and got a sense that they were I guess had their heart in the right place, that they really wanted to make something special, and so we gave it our blessing, and they've been running with it. And Don and I had, we initially, they pitched us sort of their global plan for the series, and talked to us about their pilot episode, and we gave a little feedback there, and specifically we talked about some of the things about Baymax that we felt were that you have to get right. There's things, if you don't get it right about Baymax, then you get it really wrong.
Yeah.
And so we talked about that a little bit, but ultimately it's their thing, and they're running with it, and we have not had any interaction with them in a really long time. So certainly I will check it out, and I'm very curious to see it, and I really hope that it's great. If I'll be the number one fan of that story if it's true to the characters.
And speaking of characters that transcend into real life, good segue, Gruppeteer. Of course, what I consider to potentially be the greatest Marvel cameo of all time does come at the end of Big Hero 6, where Fred finds out, I'm pretty sure it's his dad, is Stanley, the Stanley, and Stanley tells him all the ways he can wear his underpants. I have to know, can you just talk about that scene, because how did that come about? How does that happen?
Yeah. Yes, I can talk about that scene. Yeah, that was that's a good question. There was a particular reason why that scene came to be. We were nearing the end of the movie, and you sort of get to that place where you're over the hump, and you're starting to think like, oh my gosh, we really can get this movie done.
Yeah.
And we're going to hit the release date. And we were starting to sort of see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think I'm getting the movie right. I think it was Guardians of the Galaxy that came out, or maybe was it an Avengers movie? I can't remember which one we saw. No, I think it was Guardians of the Galaxy. It came out right around that time. No, it wasn't.
No.
Anyway, we saw a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
And I was struck by the fact that when the credits rolled, nobody got out of their seat.
Yeah.
People are now trained to understand that there's going to be something coming, right? And that was terrifying for Don and I, because we realized like people know that there's some Marvel pedigree here.
Yeah. And
people they might just sit there and wait, and there will be nothing at the end of our credits. So we got to do something. And so I furiously started storyboarding some ideas, but I knew it had to be something good, or we were never going to convince the studio to let us make it, because at this point they were, artists were rolling off, and the journey, we were done.
Yeah.
And so we had to cook up something good, and so I storyboarded this thing, and I just got into the part where Stan Lee says to Fred the thing about the underwear.
Yeah.
Wear them back, wear them front, inside out, and all that. And that was the real sort of clincher. And so I was working on this thing secretly, like I didn't tell anybody. And then the producer, Roy Conley, actually walked into my office as I was working on it. He saw these boards on the floor, and he didn't know what to make of it. But then when he got to that part of it, he burst out laughing. And I was like, okay, all right, one down. We just convinced Roy to do it, right?
Yeah.
And then we had a real important meeting with John Lasseter where we showed him my storyboards cut together in editorial. And it was the same thing where he was looking at it sort of, warily, waiting to see what this thing was. By the end of it, he started laughing. And, once they start laughing, you've got them, right?
Yeah.
And after that, once John signed off on it, it was full steam ahead. And so what we did was, this was an amazing thing we pulled off. Mm-hmm. Because, everyone at Disney's under one roof. And the rumor mill is crazy here. And everything flies. Yeah. Everyone knows everything about everyone's business here, right? Yeah,
right.
But we wanted to make this end credit scene and surprise our own crew by it, right?
Yeah, all right.
So what we did was we pulled together this skeleton crew, some leadership, one person from modeling, one person from animation, someone who could sort of design a set for us, like just like a handful of people.
Yeah.
And we even developed a secret knock. So we'd have these clandestine meetings, and if someone knocked on the door, it had to be a secret knock, or we wouldn't answer the door. And we kept this secret that we're making this surprise scene.
Really? Yeah.
And we actually pulled it off. We got all the way to a wrap party where the crew comes and watches the movie in the theater for the first time. Mm-hmm. Everyone sees the movie really for the first time intact. Mm-hmm. And the crew didn't know about the end credit scene. We finally had to relent. We recruited, I think, 4 or 5 of the lead animators to come in and support Zach, who was our supervising animator.
Yeah.
And so we had about a total of maybe 10 people on a crew, hundreds of people who knew about this thing. And so we had this incredible experience where we watched the movie and everyone's feeling good about how it all came together. And then we roll the credits, and of course, the crew and everyone stays, watches all the credits and applauds for their fellow their coworkers.
Oh yeah.
And then that final Disney logo appears on the screen, and then everyone gets up to leave, and then this scene that no one knew existed starts, and there was this amazing gasp. And I heard, what is this? I heard everybody say, what is this? And they all sat back down, they watched it, and they got this incredible experience of seeing this thing without having any indication it was coming. So that was a great one. We pulled over on the crew. We'll never be able to do that again. It was a one-time thing. And then the final bit of this story is, of course, we got to meet Stan Lee. Mm-hmm. And so we set up, and we had to record him secretly. So we recorded him. I think it was down at the Sony lot. And we booked the studio. Mm-hmm. And because we had to keep him, miles away from our studio, of course, the rumor would get out that Stan Lee is somehow part of this movie.
Yeah.
And so I found the celebrity that Don Hall is awestruck by.
Yeah.
Because Don Hall, he's a pretty cool customer. He's someone he's pretty unfazable. But Stan Lee was his childhood hero.
Yeah.
And the whole reason that Big Hero 6 exists is because of Don Hall's real love of comic books and superheroes. And so he kind of shut down initially. Like when we went into the recording studio, we were both there to direct Stan Lee, but I saw him just kind of turn into this little boy. Like he was just so starstruck by Stan Lee. And so he kind of retreated into the corner. And I was like, oh, well, I guess I'll be directing this session. And then by the end of the session, Don came around and he kind of rejoined and found himself again. And it was a lot of fun. He was great to work with, and Don sort of got back on his feet. But it was really sweet to see Don sort of starstruck by the great man, the legend himself, Stan Lee.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear. And speaking of things you needed to get, you were talking about John Lasseter and how things need to get by people before they're put on air. Now, John Lasseter, being the Disney animation, Pixar animation extraordinaire and connoisseur of all Hawaiian shirts, actually had one problem with a rather famous line in Big Hero 6 that people go around saying the rumor is that he wasn't going to let you put the line in the movie. But here on Cartoons vs. Cancer, we're going to bust that myth. I have to know, did John Lasseter initially have a really big problem with Baymax's Harry Baby line?
Wow, how does this stuff get out? I've never talked about this.
Really?
Okay. Well, okay. There's a seed of truth, but it's probably been a little exaggerated at this point.
All right.
I had no idea this had sort of crept up. No, we were, we were playing a scene for him at editorial, and of course we write lots of alternative lines to lots of scenes, especially a scene like that, which is kind of a throwaway comedic line where Baymax is sort of, he's kind of breaking down a little bit there, and so he's sort of saying all these random sort of garbled things, and so our great writers Rob Baird and Dan Gerson had written a bunch of alternative lines, but that's the one I really gravitated to.
Yeah, I
thought it was hilarious, and we played it, and I wouldn't say he had a strong negative reaction. He just wasn't sold. He wasn't sure that was the best one. And then we had a screening, and in one of our internal screenings that we have usually about 7 or 8 screenings on storyboard reels here in-house in our theater, and it got a really good reaction. Again, if they laugh, you got them, right?
Yeah.
And it got a really big laugh, and so afterwards, in the next editorial session, he was like, "So, were you satisfied by the response to Harry Baby?" And I said, "Yeah." And so at that point, I think he was starting to come over to our side. And then I think at one point, I think it was one of his sons had said how much he liked that line, and at that point, he was completely on board.
Yeah.
He was never going to veto it.
Yeah.
He was just someone who he just was a little bit. He just wasn't convinced at first. That's all.
All right, myth sort of busted. Who knows? Kind of. In the comments, someone would like to know. His name is Jambi, the Great and Powerful. Hi, Jambi. He would like to know what kind of research did you do into writing about Polynesian culture in the movie Moana?
Well, I would say that was something that's taken very seriously. I think you feel it in the movie. But I would say personally, I didn't do a whole lot because I joined the movie a couple years into the production. Ron and John, the great Ron and John, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and all the rest. They were the directors of the film, and they had gone on many extensive research trips, and they really forged relationships, all across the region. And they went out of the way to they created this a sort of a council of people that we ran everything by and got their feedback. And if something wasn't right culturally, or if there was something that to them felt like insensitive, or sometimes just a costuming thing, like that they didn't wear things like that. And there was so we really, I think, went out of our way to try to make sure we did the best job we could, being respectful to the culture, and we had frequent visitors from that region, and there was a lot of back and forth. And Opatai was one of the songwriters, and he brought a lot of authenticity to the music, and I would say that one of the most, I guess, gratifying things about the experience of Moana was seeing now how it's been embraced all across the region since it came out. We've had, I think initially when they heard we were doing this, there was a mix of sort of excitement with some skepticism or some nervousness that they wouldn't be treated respectfully. I think now that it's come out, I'm sure there's always going to be different points of view, but it seems like the dominant reaction, or most people from the region have really gone out of their way to celebrate the movie and tell us that it's meaningful to them. And we've heard, anecdotally, a lot of people from the region saying that, younger people, kids who've seen the movie from that region, have become curious about their own history. And so I know that Ron Clements was just there recently, and in the airport on the way back at the airport, there was a group of singers that were accompanying him, and they spontaneously just started singing "We Know the Way" to him. I'm actually tearing up a little bit thinking about this. They spontaneously saying "We Know the Way" to him. He didn't expect that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the even more surprising thing is, he said almost everybody else at the airport who was just there to catch a plane joined in and started singing with them.
Wow.
And so it was a real indication, really example of how almost universally embraced the movies become there. And I think that that's the thing. Now that it's been in theaters, now it's having its second life out there in the world, and I think that's ultimately the thing that I'm the most proud of. Is we made a movie that was embraced by the cultures of that region.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I hate to kiss up to my guests, but I love Moana. It's awesome. It's a great movie.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
So unfortunately, we're almost out of time. We have two more questions. One is from the comments. Andre Brooks would like to know how much actual drawing is done in the process of CGI animation.
Well, there's still a whole boatload of storyboards that are done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been a storyboard artist for about half my career and a director for the other half. But I continue to storyboard on my own films, and a lot of the directors here came from the storyboard ranks, and we will oftentimes help each other out by boarding on each other's films. And so that is definitely not a lost art. That's still how the movie proves itself out, and where you find some of the really great stuff.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of the animators are amazing draftsmen and come from a 2D traditional background, and some of them just sort of use some of that the fundamental the knowledge that they have, and some of them actually will do a pass where they draw out the keyframes or will animate it by hand as a way to kind of feel it out before going into CG.
Yeah.
But I'm amazed. I mean, a lot of people who work here, I'm in the Disney building right now, a lot of people who work in this building were attracted to Disney animation because of those original films, Bambi and Snow White and all those great movies.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them grew up loving to draw. Mm-hmm. And it really permeates this building. It's so much a part of the DNA of this place. And so I'm always astonished where you'll find really amazing artists in every department. There'll be a lighter or an effects artist that is trying to express a point, and then they'll just start drawing it, and I'll just be blown away by how great they are, and it's just everywhere. And I think you feel it in the animation. You feel it in our work. There's something about a studio that has a lot of people who draw well in it. Yeah. That changes the way you see things. It changes the way you see the world. Because if you're someone who draws, that means if you're someone who draws well, that means you've drawn a lot in your life. Mm-hmm. That means you've been sitting there with your sketchbook, really observing. You've been looking at things and seeing them for what they are, and you understand structures. You understand movements. And I think that's really the secret weapon as far as Disney feature animation goes.
And unfortunately, that is nearly all the time we have. But one more thing, I always ask this to people before I sign off. If there's anybody out there watching this and they're wondering why I spent the last 5 minutes wiping my brow, because this place is really, really hot in the studio right now. And they're wondering, how can they themselves get into animation? What advice would you give them?
Well, I know I'll repeat myself a little bit, but for me, it was one of the important things was drawing. Yeah. That's how I sort of got into storytelling. Was creating comic books and designing worlds and characters, and so it was always through drawing, and because drawing is observing, and so I think that's really important. Yeah. I think a lot of it is if you want to sort of develop, because if you, there's a place where if you develop your talent, you will be sought after, and I think that one of the important things to do is to really interact with other people.
Yeah.
Really bounce your ideas. If you're a storyteller, bounce your ideas off of other people. It's amazing, and open yourself up to critique, you know, and really ask people to challenge your ideas and challenge your story. And what will happen is if they give you ideas that are great, then great, take them.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't agree, then you're in a position of articulating why you don't agree, and then you'll start to understand your own movie better. But I think that the real thing that will start to happen is if you ask people to really, if you ask for honest feedback from people that you trust, what will happen is you'll find points where you disagree, and then more often than not, it will create this new thing, this third better idea. And that idea wouldn't have existed had you not had that open debate, right? So you got to create these spaces for open debate, and that's how you improve at storytelling. Is by challenging your own assumptions, and by challenging other people's assumptions, and just mixing it up. You know, I'm a real believer in that animation is a collaborative art form, and nobody does it by themselves. And people are at their best when they're working with people when they're soliciting honest feedback.
Yeah.
I would say that's something that you should be doing for your entire career. I think I would say draw. I would say show your work. I would say if you're a storyteller, understand that stories change.
Yeah.
Be willing to rework your stories over and over and over again. Try something new. Don't resist change. You gotta take a chance. Just try something. Just let go. I know it's kind of scary, but just understand that your story is only going to get better if you attack it, and if you open yourself up to feedback, and if you invite change, and if you're willing to iterate. I think that that should be something that you're willing to do. Don't just sit there in isolation. Don't be afraid. Just open yourself up, and good things will happen.
Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Williams is the co-director of Bolt and Big Hero 6, both of which are probably available on like some streaming services. I don't know. Go watch them. You should go watch them. Yeah, I'd recommend. If I'm allowed to ask, you working on anything coming up with Chris Williams' name on it? Anything that the public can know about?
Yes. Yes, but Don and I are currently, kicking around some ideas, and we're at the very beginning of a long development phase, and so much of what we do is research, and so we're casting a very wide net, and we're just kind of exploring very broad topics right now, working with John a little bit, but yeah, it's going to be years and years before anything with my name on it is in a movie theater, I think. Yeah, hopefully you'll check it out, and hopefully you'll like it.
Well, if you ever need a donut boy, I'm just saying, my email. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another thrilling episode of Cartoons vs. Cancer. The next episode of Cartoons vs. Cancer has not been scheduled yet. I don't know. I'll work something out. It'll probably be with Butch Hartman. I'll have to reschedule that. Anyway, don't worry about it. Just keep tuned in. Thank you guys for watching. Check the link in the description below if you would like to donate. That's what this show is for. Is there anything you would like to say before we sign off, Chris?
Hello? Oh, no. I lost it.
Oh, are you sure?
Oh, hey.
Yep.
Hey, I lost it for a second.
Oh, I was asking if there's anything you'd like to say before we sign off.
Oh, well, I'll just say it's been really, really great, really fun. I will recommend this to my friends at Disney, and I really love what you're doing. I really admire it, and I hope your friend is doing all right. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to come on and talk to you.
Yeah, no problem. So, yep, like I said, I'll probably schedule another episode sometime before July. Anyway, don't worry about it. I'm a busy guy. We'll see you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.